Welcome to the Retrospect podcast, a show where people come together from different walks of life and discuss a topic from their generation's perspective. My name is Ian, and as always, I'm joined by Stoney.
Hello.
And Jason.
Hello, everyone.
What's up?
Oh.
What's happening, guys?
Yeah.
Man, I tell you, it's getting hot outside.
Yes, it is.
I was out there, I know, last week doing yard work. Well, I can't say I kind of bring it on myself. I went out, ran 5 miles.
Oh, gosh.
Came home, did yard work. And it's probably 90-something degrees outside by that time.
You didn't get a heat
Then I
stroke?
get in my shed,
Oh, God.
and I'm hearing noises. And I'm like, what is in my shed? Well, it's a baby bird.
Uh-oh.
I don't know how a bird got in there, but it was in there. And so instead of making it easy for me to get the bird out, I had to pull out everything in the shed to finally catch this bird and bring it outside where at least it'd have a chance at life. So my ordeal ended up being several hours screwing around in my shed.
No.
And I literally, by the time I walked inside my house, I am drenched.
Oh, yeah.
I am cooked. There's nothing left to Jason, I'm going to tell you at that point. So, yes, it is hot out there right now. And
I think it's also just the fact that it's so humid around here that it
Well, it
feels
rained
so much
for 2
worse.
weeks straight, and now
I'm kind of worried now. They're talked about, I hope we don't have another dry summer like we had last year.
Yeah.
It was, no rain. And you start getting temps. It's already climbing.
Yeah.
I was luckily this past weekend, I was in a swimming pool most of the day, Saturday.
Humble brag.
Yes. So, yeah, me and the girlfriend went to her sister's house, and she's got a pool in her backyard. So, yes.
I heard a lot of friends that were having pool parties over this weekend.
Well, what else do you do when it's
exactly.
not other than you're sitting inside your house?
Well, that's one of two things you actually don't want to own yourself. A pool and a boat. You always want to have friends or family that own a pool and a boat because you don't want to own it yourself.
I've heard that too.
Because you know what boat stands for, right?
What?
Break out another 1,000. Every time you got to work on it, it's $1,000.
Well, boats
and a pool's kind of the same thing.
Boats are luxuries,
So it's a pool.
Yeah, pools are are luxuries too. But God, they feel good though.
I bet.
But
A lot of work.
Most people that have them at the end of the day, toward the end, it's fine when you have young children, you're out there a lot, but kind of once the kids are gone and they're doing their own thing,
Ready to fill it in.
they're about ready to get rid of it because it is a lot of work. It's a lot of maintenance to them. So, but it was nice this past weekend.
I bet.
To cool off. So, yeah, it was a good weekend.
Cool. What about you? What you been up to?
The boss was out of work for a while, and I'm not
out of work.
Oh, he went out of town.
Y'all laid him off?
No, yeah. I laid him know.
You are fired.
No. He went on a trip, and he's been gone for the better part of a week or so, and when the cat's away, the mice will play, and so I'm not technically the second in charge, but at the end of the day, I felt like I was trying to wrangle everyone together, saying like, "Come on, guys, I can't do my job efficiently if I don't have like your stuff," and everyone's kind of slacking around. So I had to be the bad guy for a little bit, being like, "Come on, like I need you guys to like step up because I'm not gonna be able to do my job if I don't."
Mm-hmm.
So this past week has been just trying to juggle all that stuff. It's not been bad, but going into work, obviously, when it's also nearly 100 degrees outside, is not making me any happier. Walking in, I'm like sweating. I'm like, man.
Yeah, it's right now. And believe me, it's just getting started.
I know.
Yeah,
and I'm just trying to be optimistic. I'm like, please, just don't be like last year.
I do have some vacations that coming up, so I bet it won't be toward the end of September and October.
Where are you going?
Going to a family trip to the beach.
Okay.
At the end of September. And then about mid-October, we just booked flights to North Carolina. So I've got some family that has a house in Whittier, North Carolina.
Okay.
Been there before, and so they've invited us to come up there. And so we're going to spend almost about 5 days up there. Probably do a little whitewater rafting and
fun.
A little hiking and stuff like that. Then and then already I might be going on a cruise in February.
Really?
Yeah. So
I don't have any trips like immediately planned. But man, I want to try. I know I should probably hold off, but I want to go on another trip really bad.
Where would you want to go?
Jinx.
Yeah. There's a couple of places. I've been contacted by a friend of mine up in Canada again, and he wants me to go out and see him. So I want to go see him.
I'd like to go to Canada. I've never been.
I've
been close.
He and I want to go over to Calgary and see, like, Banff and all that, just the mountains and all that stuff. I didn't get a chance to see when I lived there. So I really want to go out there again. But if I'm thinking more like reasonable as far as like financial wise, like I think going back to the beach would be fun. I kind of want to go like out west somewhere. So anyways, those are the ideas that I want to go. I mean, obviously a big trip I want to go is, my brother just got back from going to Scotland and seeing all the Islay Scotch distilleries and all that stuff. And so I kind of want to go out to Ireland or Scotland and all that. So.
Well, that takes money.
I know.
When you start going overseas, that's a little bit of extra cash.
That's the kind of like 5-year goal thing. Like I'll get there in a few years, but it won't be immediate. But
yeah, I would.
So
yeah, I've got some trips. I mean, that's one thing. I feel like that's going to probably increase in my life now that I'm retired.
Oh yeah,
and I've got time to go off and go do some things, but. Yeah, I do have to take into account my girlfriend and her. She's still working, and so it's just not a matter of just, hey, I want to go. It just doesn't work that way. But
does it come across as gloating, like, oh, I'm just gonna go on another trip?
Well, to think about it, for someone in my throughout the years, people have asked me, why don't you travel more? And I just be honest, I've never really been a big traveler. I never have been. For a while, I just didn't want to go travel by myself.
Yeah.
Just to go off somewhere. But, I mean, I like being with family, and, I'm a big family person, so I love being with my family and friends and to go and spend some time doing some things. And just like this cruise that my parents just brought up. And, my dad is a musician.
Okay.
So he plays baritone sax. So
I don't think I ever knew that.
Yeah, he's retired banker.
Right.
But he grew up playing in a band, and so a very good player. And their band is actually doing a music cruise on the cruise ship. So that's what it's their band will be on the cruise, performing on the cruise ship.
That's
so
awesome.
it'll be I think they're looking at sometime in February of next year. So, and then of course, I think next year I think the plan is, at least with my running side of my friends, I think we're going back to Glacier.
Really?
Yes. So it won't be for running. It will be just strictly a vacation type hiking.
That's cool.
So there's some nice trips coming up. So you talk about Canada. It wasn't far, because I remember when I did go there back in 21, I remember where they dropped us off at the starting point of that race.
Yeah.
There was a sign saying Canadian border. So we're not far
That's fun.
from the Canadian border. But, cool stuff. There's a couple things I'd love to go out west. I'd love to go see Yosemite National Park, Zion. I'd love to go do that. So,
I like looking at the old Victorian houses and stuff like that online and stuff. And Miranda and I were looking one day, and we found this gorgeous house. And when you looked at it, they had these large concrete pillars on one whole side of the yard. That's because that was the Canadian border. And I'm like, that would be kind of neat. And then on the road was a crossing to go into Canada. So that was kind of neat. I was like, ooh.
Wow. Yeah. Someone's getting a little gutsy building a house right on the border.
On the border.
Wow.
How neat is that?
That's cool.
Or say your house is in one country and your backyard is in
I
another.
know, right? have to have a visa just to go cut your backyard.
Exactly.
I have my papers in order. I got to go cut my backyard.
Excuse me, sir. Why are you entering the country?
I thought you said you're going to go mow the lawn. Why are you getting your passport? That's the same thing. That's great.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of South Carolina, you said you were going to North Carolina, right?
Yes.
Well, South Carolina and North Carolina actually have a little bit to do with today's subject, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. That's tragedy. You know,
the sketch tragedy.
Yeah, this Mica Miller case, it's kind of really captured the national media. And it's, you know, I involving of course, a husband and wife. He was a pastor at the Solid Rock Ministries Church in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and
that he inherited from his father.
Right, and there seems to have been some, lack of a better term, some shenanigans going on with him and his wife, and then the wife ends up, supposedly, according to the medical examiner, with a self-inflicted gunshot wound, and supposedly in North Carolina they found her body in Lumberton,
Lumber River State Park.
Yeah,
just across the border of North Carolina.
Yeah, she was found dead on April 27th. It was about 70 miles north of Myrtle Beach, just to kind of give some people know where Myrtle Beach, South Carolina is. So about 70 miles north of that, but. Yeah, you know, I was watching some videos on this. You know, unfortunately, this poor fisherman that has kind of been drug into this thing by, you know, just saying, you know, he was out fishing and heard some noises.
Well, he heard her crying first.
Heard some crying.
And then about 2 to 3 minutes later, he heard a gunshot. And he is being destroyed.
Yeah, I don't.
I mean, that just he is being destroyed.
I mean, people just lose their brains over this stuff. It was like. You know, the guy was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. I mean, you know, he's just, his day is, you know, he got up that morning, I'm just going to go out fishing. And all of a sudden.
And there was other people there also, but he's the one who spoke up and tried to help the police. But he's the one being destroyed online for this.
Well, this case is, I mean, the family has really, has not believed what the husband has alleged, that, you know, he had nothing to do with this, that his wife had mental problems.
Well, let me ask you a question. I wish we had somebody in law enforcement that we could ask some questions to. How can you cremate a body within 2 days, number one, if they're in a divorce situation? I mean, and a suicide?
Yeah.
What? Wait a minute. And there's so many videos saying how the police have just completely dropped the ball on this. There were multiple casings found in the car.
Yep.
But then let's take that another step further. She had $500 on her.
That's right.
That's a very specific amount of money. She also filled up the car with gas.
That's right.
And she bought an energy drink. These are not things somebody that's going to commit suicide are going to do. If you're going to truly commit suicide, you're not worried whether the car is done.
Right. No.
And on many occasions, she said, if I end up with a bullet in my head, it was JP. This is coming from Micah's sister, Sierra Francis. Because I believe they're filing a wrongful death lawsuit on him.
Right.
On
JP. I think it's against Solid Rock Ministries, the actual church, which he's pretty much the
because he's got
owner.
nothing, but the church has $5 to $7 million in the bank.
Well, as I said, there's a lot of shenanigans going on with this. That you know, Mica was she was also a suspect in some money that went missing. It's $1,200 that went missing from the church that she was a suspect in.
See, I didn't see that one.
Yeah, she did. So this money was meant for some missionary work in Africa, and it turned up missing. There was a police investigation, and her name was there.
Now, see, there was $12,000 for the missions that he is suspect of doing.
Well, there's a lot of back and forth. There just seemed like as I'm saying, there's a lot of just kind of strange things going on with this couple. There was about a 14-year age gap between him and her. Her complaint.
She met him in the youth ministry,
right?
And
she was 15.
He started grooming
she was 15. Yes. She says that she started grooming him at 10. Her own sister kind of discounted that and said, no, it wasn't that early. It was around her when she was 15 years old. When he, I guess, met her and started maybe grooming her to do things.
And when all this was starting, he's got a rap sheet. Knowing damaged property ×2, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, possession of a liquor by minor ×2, possession of consumed liquor by a minor, possession of 2.5 grams of cannabis, contributing to the delinquency of a child. I'd like to know what the difference is between that and a minor is. Domestic battery with bodily harm, domestic battery with physical contact, assault and battery of a high and aggravated nature ×2, and being on the premises after warning to or refuse to leave.
That's all that one guy?
That's one guy.
Well, she had made two. I mean, I'm going to kind of back up a little bit. I mean, she actually was married before.
So was he.
Before she met him, which I found very interesting. She was married. Where is it at? I have it here somewhere. She was married at 18 and she divorced at 21. So her attorney forced against the groom, saying she moved to South Carolina. She said she moved to South Carolina at 15, was married to another man at 18, and divorced at 21. So there's obviously, not to speak ill or of someone who's now deceased and she can't defend herself anymore, but obviously there's some issues going on with her. But
how many of those problems were caused by him? If he was grooming her from 10 to 14, right, he was doing something to this poor.
I agree totally. I think this guy is a bit squirrely. I think there's they were married. The guy, the pastor, they were married in 2017, but they separated in 2023. So. Right before now,
when she went to Africa, and the pastor was sending messages to the parishioners that were there with her in Africa, stating this and that, and don't tell her this, and I'll give y'all cash and gifts if you do this, and don't say that, and then,
Yeah, I mean it. Prior to, she had mentioned that, and I think, Stoney, you mentioned that that she said if something happened to me, it would, if there was a bullet, and it was because of John Paul.
That in and of itself is fishy enough.
Yeah, but she had made 2 complaints prior to her death. She had made 2 recent complaints with the police department regarding someone that had slashed her tire, put a tracking device on her car, and was interacted with another person who, in the police report, that name was redacted. Well, come to find out, it was the actual ex-husband.
Well, that's what he was trying to get the parishioners to do. She had a restraining order on him, and she had filed for divorce. And he was saying, get her to rescind the divorce, rescind that, and They got her convinced to come back and do that, and then it continued on. He was mind gaming this lady. He was mind gaming this lady.
I saw some things where there was an investigative journalist who had done a lot of work on this case. That, I mean, he put out in his own email though, saying he pretty much was asking forgiveness for basically doing those things. So it was him that was actually doing this. The guy seemed to have had a problem with letting go. I don't know. I don't know what the psychological profile of this guy is.
Well, I can shed some light on that too. He was totally mind screwing with this lady, and I'd like to use another word, but Ian always writes stuff down, and then there's another word I would like to use, and it starts with an F.
You said we shouldn't make this podcast
right.
explicit,
you're
so
right.
I was like, of all the words.
I would like to use another word, but he was mind messing with this lady. He would bring home homeless people and force her to have sex with them.
Oh, God.
And there was one point she called her parents, her dad, and said, "Dad, I think I'm pregnant, and this baby may be black," because of the homeless people. And then there was a couple of examples that his dad and sister had given that when she wouldn't, he would have sex with the homeless people. They were having threesomes, or he would just have homosexual sex with the homeless people.
Talking about this is the
JP.
This is JP.
JP doing this. He was screwing with her, and one time, I guess because of the divorce or something, he actually posted nude pictures of her.
Yes, it was a topless photo.
Photo of her. Now, I mean, come on, when you're making a woman do all of this kind of stuff, and you are degrading her, and you are screwing with her head so bad. You know,
he claimed that she had mental cases. I think he.
Well, he would been laying that groundwork.
I think he's the one who's the mental case.
Yes, absolutely, because he was screwing with this. And how many people have come forward and said that this church was more of a cult than it was a Christian church? This church has cult-like status. And now everybody is disappearing. They had over almost 700 to 750 and 800 members, and there's less than 50.
But let me tell you, this is what's strange, though, about her death, though. I mean, but you're talking about she had stopped and got gas, but she also stopped and bought a gun.
Right.
Which,
was it to protect herself?
I don't know.
What if he said, "I'm going to kill you"?
Well, I was going to say, if she felt
the
feared for her
question
life,
is,
then, I mean...
exactly. So, but my question is then, is it feasible that maybe did she just shoot herself?
Well, but that was my question. What if she did? But all of these things, he's blackmailing her.
Right.
He's doing all of these things. He's destroying her mind.
Right.
I mean, he's just as responsible.
Right. There's a sinister...
Yes,
undercurrent there that
I think it's a demonic undercurrent. I think that this guy deserves the worst that can happen to him.
Well, the good news is that the Robeson County Sheriff's Office officially launched an investigation to her death. Mm-hmm. So I have a feeling, just based on what I've seen and just kind of looking at some of the news reports and the investigative reports on this, I think this guy's going to end up getting hooked.
I hope so.
Well, he may end up basically taking his own life if
I thought that too. Yep.
Once the walls start closing in on him. Now, I don't want to necessarily blame we don't know that. I mean, we can speculate all we want on it, but I don't want to necessarily destroy this guy's reputation. I'm not saying this guy has done everything that has been claimed, but it seems to be there's something going on there that needs to be looked at. And I'm hoping that justice is carried out appropriately in this case.
100%
to bring peace to the family. Matter of fact, a lot of the parishioners don't believe this pastor.
Mm-hmm.
You know, which that's telling.
Think about the next day when she died on a Saturday. He preaches a whole sermon. And then at the end of that sermon, this is he does the whole sermon. I mean, you know, really? And then he comes after the whole sermon is done. Hey, congregation, just so you know, I have got a very sad announcement. My wife committed suicide yesterday after she filed for divorce, and her location of choice was an impoverished county across state lines where law enforcement is known to let murder cases sit for decades. She was schizophrenic, bipolar, I swear, pinky promise. Now, if you could refrain from discussing this matter further, I'd appreciate it. That's a quote from his sermon, and now they're trying to remove the sermon.
Well, he has been relieved. I don't know if you know that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
He's been relieved of ministerial duties while this issue's going on, which I can't blame him because as a church, it's like we can't have a guy that's basically leading the church and he's a suspect in a potential murder
but you also have to think about this, too. There was only 2 people with any power or control in that church, him and his counselor. Well, if they don't remove him, what's to say he just don't go in there, clean the bank, and poof.
Right.
So they got to protect their assets. They got to protect everything and stop him from just leaving the country. So they needed to do that the next day. So, but this guy is just sketch. There is just so much.
You know,
you have to wonder.
Some of these guys some of these churches like this.
Well, look at Scientology. What is it? David Musgrove, who his wife has been missing since what? How long has she been missing? She hasn't been seen for how long? Shoot, I don't forgot how long she's been missing.
Some of these, I just have serious doubts about some of these. I've just seen so many things go down with some of these type of little small churches like this, and it's like, you know,
the Branch Davidians. Think about the Waco thing. Look what that guy was doing. David Koresh. Is that his name?
David Koresh.
Okay, Koresh. Sorry. You know, he was batshit crazy.
Yeah.
This happens a lot.
You know, I don't know. I mean, this is I still think this is a lot of there's a lot of unanswered questions here. She did put out a deal on Facebook. I think I remember seeing she made a post about divorce
and being abused and you can get out of it
and saying, you know, God is against divorce.
And abuse.
Right. I can trying to remember the post.
But that was that video they're also using to say this is not what somebody who's considering suicide would be posting a couple of days before they commit suicide.
Right. Well, I mean, it wouldn't. I mean, if, you know, maybe he's one of these guys that is, you know, very kind of controlling and he was basically losing his world, so to speak, when she left him and.
But he was also afraid that she would be telling people all of this crap that he was making her do.
Well,
you know, he even in his little sermon, he's very, you know, keep the information to us. So he was threatening. He could have been possibly threatening her, saying, "Hey, you let this out, I'm gonna do something to you, or I'm gonna do something to your family," because that's how abusers act. That's what they do. That's what they say, and they try to keep everything a secret.
Was there anything going on with his? I mean, I'm trying to think. Was there any stories about his parents?
I don't know that I saw anything, but I can't remember a whole lot right now.
I don't remember if there's anything going on there, but I'd be very curious if he's, you know, his parents are still alive. I would assume.
I think his dad is.
Yeah.
I think his dad is.
So
I think I remember seeing a video of his dad coming out and saying something, but I don't really remember.
Yeah. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. I don't know if they're going to find unless this guy, they can trace the murder scene to him.
Well, he was supposedly with...
He was somewhere else, so he's got an alibi. He does have an alibi.
But, one thing they did say in this new investigation, that they're taking her phone and they're looking at some things in her phone. And they were very specific about that. What if he was on the phone with her? What if he was, could he been directing it from another place? Because a couple of people said in some videos that it sounded like either somebody else was in the car with her when she made the 911 call. And then something about that also, she says, well, I just want to make sure my family can find me. Well, somebody that's committing suicide isn't thinking like that. What really happened in that car?
I don't know. I've known some suicide people, that have done that. That's a concern that,
okay.
So that's what I'm saying. It seems that the way he was acting, the abuse, all this other stuff, that there is definitely something there to look at.
Oh, absolutely.
There's definitely something to look at. Now, the question is, did he actually kill her? Or did she, in her own grief and despair, felt like she had nowhere else to go and this was her only way out? I don't know. Of course, you never want to make someone guilty. We do supposedly live in a country that you're innocent until you're proven guilt. But it seems like a lot of circumstantial evidence there kind of points to obviously something is going on there. And I wouldn't put it past someone like him, considering he basically admitted to basically slashing her tire and tracking her vehicle and all this other stuff. He outed himself by doing.
Yeah, he did.
He outed himself, so he's admitted to doing some of this stuff. But now, of course, that's slashing a tire and putting a tracker on a vehicle is different from murdering somebody.
Right, but it's all. But for me, at least, it muddies the water because if you're willing to go to some of that length, it almost feels like if that feels normal to you in the heat of the moment. For me, like if I'm upset or I get super aggravated or mad, I may consider slashing someone's tires. But if your baseline, if that's normal for you just to be like, I'm upset, I'm going to do that, in the heat of the moment, what is further than that for you? Would it be killing somebody? Because for me, that feels like that's almost, only.
But if you're that much of a control freak,
I know,
now all of a sudden you're going to lose, because if you're doing these things to control somebody, and then all of a sudden there's a restraining order and a divorce and everything else, now you've just lost control. Like you said, how much further are you going to go to get that control back?
Right. If you rest in the too far area, too far for you is the ultimate.
What's comfortable for you?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And for me, like I said, sitting right here today, if I get super mad at somebody, the thought of slashing someone's tires doesn't really cross my mind.
See, that mine either. I got other things to do, but not. Yeah.
Right. Now, would I try and make your day probably a little bit worse? Maybe. But that's my reach. So that, like I said, and taking someone's life is only reserved for self-defense reasons. But like I was saying
defense
before,
of another human.
Exactly.
Sure.
Right. But anyways, but like you're saying, but to
what you comfortable with?
Reinforce the point you were saying before about the fact that if you feel like you're losing everything, if you feel like this person that knows, quote unquote, probably knows too much, if she starts, making your whole world crumble down, not only are you a control freak, or you're an abuser in that sense, but then again, if your potential livelihood is going to be at risk because of all of it as well. I could see someone doing some pretty crazy stuff. Again, that's not to say that he did it, but the last time we had a discussion about the potentials of someone killing somebody else, and then of course often themselves, all of it kind of came out to be pretty factual. A handful of years ago.
Oh yeah, what was
Gabby
that?
Petito.
Yeah, that's right. We called that.
Well, I'm reading here, and this is quoting one of the former members of the church. They said as his marriage crumbled, JP would say, "I'm a sinner like you, so it's fairly easy to forgive him as a changed man. We all wanted the power to be redeemed for our sinful natures." But as Miller's marriage to Mica also crumbled, Weber saw a drastic change. JP started acting more and more, Weber paused for the precise word, evil.
Ooh.
His sermons became very myopic and narcissistic.
I saw that video too.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I saw that.
Disillusioned, Weber left the church last year.
Wow.
So,
See,
Well, they said he
it's
was
all
taking
that-
advantage of being a sinner and trying to use that to bring more people in.
I hate that.
Yeah.
As a believer myself, that's the stuff that hurts is when someone uses religion in that regard to some sort of gain.
his father, and this is I found this is interesting. He says father Reginald Wayne Miller is a pastor, also, who once had a thriving congregation described as the largest charismatic church in eastern South Carolina. He also had a Bible college and a morning TV show called Good Morning Jesus. That empire crumbled after he was accused of sexual misconduct and convicted of federal charges for forcing international students at his school to work for little or no payment.
Yikes.
So you sins of the father.
Yep.
The apple don't fall far from the
The
tree.
apple doesn't fall far from the tree. You know?
Yikes.
How much did he learn from his dad in manipulation tactics and
Of course.
control tactics? And, you know, if you're controlling students to work for nothing just to come to school or be in this country, you've got a control scam going.
Or you have to know how to say the right thing at the right time.
That's
you got to
good.
know how to be a silver-tongued devil. That's the thing. Is I have worked around people in ministry like that always just I don't want to say charismatic because I feel like having charisma and is one thing, but being able to talk to somebody and make them feel like your ideas are their ideas is something that I've experienced firsthand, of someone talking to you and has a certain way of saying things, has a certain way of just kind of manipulating you in a way of making you believe that all the things that this person is saying that you're coming up with it and it's your decision whenever it's just them feeding that into you. It's crazy, and it makes me feel uncomfortable whenever I've been around those people.
I mean,
I wouldn't be surprised if it's the same sort of situation.
This is incredible. During one of the couple's separations last year, JP went on dates with the adult daughter of a family in his church. The family would soon confront JP and the elders about his behavior during those dates.
Mm-hmm. I saw
according
that.
to 5 people connected to the church. The Post and Courier reviewed text messages in which JP apologized for what he called ungodly actions.
Gosh, I hate the use of...
And blamed it on bipolar episodes stemming from the stress of his marriage disintegrating. The family left the church. JP faced no punishment, church members said.
Oh, that was one of the things that was looked at is why this was widespread and not recent activity. He's been doing this a while, and the church wasn't doing anything to punish him. They weren't doing anything.
No, I mean, it said the church was unwilling or unable to hold him accountable, including after JP confessed to the congregation that he had engaged in drug use during a trip to Disney World in recent years.
Well, he owned a bar.
Yeah.
He owned a bar, and he would go in there drinking and womanizing, and they said the people that were going to the bar would find out, oh my God, he's a pastor and he's married? Wait a minute. He owned a bar. I mean, I don't have a problem with somebody owning a bar, but
Right.
you know, don't
See, it's just
talk about hypocritical.
More things to kind of throw at this dude. Sierra Francis, Micah's sister, said that when she was a teenager attending the church with her family, JP wasn't allowed to close the door to his office during meetings with girls or women.
100%.
The place always felt more like a cult than a church to her, Francis said. Everybody else just pretended that nothing bad was happening there, she said.
Yikes.
Yeah, in 2022, Mica sought shelter at Francis' home in the upstate for a few days. Francis said a church elder helped Mica escape JP's house after he pounded on the door and yelled while she was locked in a bedroom. In text messages to Francis, JP threatened to show up at her house, writing, "I'm armed and I'm ready."
Get out.
No, I didn't hear that one.
Like this is what I'm talking about. This is where it starts to muddy the water. Where it's like you may have a case, you may have an alibi, but there's a large repertoire of some shady stuff.
They said the couple's marriage had been steeped in odd acts of secrecy from the very beginning. They had married covertly before staging a public ceremony at the church in 2017. Mica's divorce lawyer, Regina Ward, said JP convinced Mica that it was the best way for him to be her caretaker after she underwent breast augmentation surgery at his urging, Ward said.
Excuse me? What?
Her family didn't learn about the marriage until the after effects of the anesthesia triggered bizarre behaviors that landed Mica in a mental hospital, Ward said. They showed up to the hospital and JP refused to let them see her, she said. It was the first step in a pattern of trying to isolate Mica from her family.
Yeah.
That's the first
Mica's
red
sister.
flag right there. Yeah.
Yep. JP convinced Mica to dismiss the October divorce case. Then he had her involuntarily committed to a psychiatric facility in February, Ward said. He filed his own case against her before dismissing it. He had convinced Mica to give him power of attorney over her health care decision.
No, dude, this is...
Which he used to have her hospitalized, Ward said. After her release, Mica called police at least 5 times on her husband, accusing him of tracking, harassing, and threatening her. During the same period in March, JP accused her of stealing from the church bank account, but the case was closed after Mica proved the allegations were false.
Oh, there you go.
Soon after, in April, she filed legal separation paperwork, a common step to start dividing assets on the path toward divorce. She also made an extensive list for Ward outlining JP's behavior. This is about domestic abuse, Ward said. People have a hard time wrapping their mind around the idea that somebody can't just walk out the door. And it's hard, especially if you feel like, as a biblical woman or a spiritual woman, that you're supposed to obey your husband. Mica also provided Ward with 11 of her journals. The attorney declined to share copies with the Post and Courier, but she said they included Mica's description of alleged abuse and her attempts to square her religious beliefs surrounding divorce and forgiveness with the personal hell that she was living through. In March, Mica posted a video online, which we just talked about, where she spoke about abusive relationship and her faith. God hates divorce, but why? It's because it hurts people, she said. But does abuse hurt people? How do you think God feels about that?
Yeah, I watched that video. I saw her.
I'm going to come out right now and say it, that I know that there are some people that have very strong opinions on divorce, but if you were in a relationship like that, that is controlling and manipulating and abusing you, that I 100% believe that God would honor a divorce like that. That is not a relationship. That is not a situation that I think that anybody should be in. And I think that is something that I believe wholeheartedly that is something.
When your health, people get this idea, and I know religion gets kind of dumped on a lot when it comes to marriage and divorce and all that. But when it comes to your own health and abuse going on, any sane person would say you need to separate, you need to extricate myself from that environment to at least get myself safe in an environment where I'm not involved. You know, I'm not being subjected to that kind of stuff. I don't think any reasonable person, I don't know of any religion, mainstream Christian religion, that would say no, a woman should stay or even a man, because there are men also in abusive relationships with women.
Right.
And it ain't just all the other way. I know that's kind of, we think it's all men abusing women, but sometimes it goes the other way.
Right.
So
it's not always physical.
It's not always physical.
Right.
So no, I don't. I think that kind of gets. I think the idea of, now I do believe that, I think there have been consequences to no fault divorce.
Yeah,
I do believe that. But I think when it comes to abuse, I mean, no one would be like, yeah, you need to stay there and be with your husband. Right. No, I don't.
I was talking about from like a religious perspective, especially whenever people try to use, like in this scenario where there is, it's so messy because of the fact that like people have certain belief systems and you're really playing into that, and I think it's unfortunate.
Yeah, it said Ward said, and Francis said Mica had settled on the idea of a no-fault divorce before her death because she didn't want to hurt the church. But when things would get really bad, Ward said, Mica would threaten to expose her husband's behaviors to his church members. Weber, the former Solid Rock member, empathizes with Mica's sense of church as a community that loved her. He felt that the 700-member congregation was a supportive community despite the increasingly erratic pastor. Weber said his family and many others offered their homes and protection to Mica.
Wow. That's so sad.
Well, he was reading texts from multiple members of the church that had offered her counseling and a safe space.
Yep.
And, hey, if you ever want to talk about your husband, you can talk to us about it. He was reading texts that he got off of her phone from a lot of people trying to help her.
Yeah, I saw some some other people that have talked about John Paul, about he was, I think 2 months before when they were kind of going through their deal, their divorce proceedings, that he was a food server at a restaurant. He actually attended, left a waitress a large tip with his phone number, and they exchanged some flirtatious text messages. And so, I mean, this guy's, this guy is a little, this guy's a little squirrely to me.
After hearing everything and really putting it all together, I suspect foul play. Will he get justice? I mean, I hope so, but I don't think that I don't think she killed herself, but that's just.
No, I think there's some fishy going on here. Whether he did it or he hired somebody to do it.
Right.
Well, after my conversations with Hottie Dr. Miranda, she agrees with the two of you. She thinks it was, but here's my point. Even if she did it, he might as well have pulled the trigger.
Oh, yeah. That's so.
He might have well pulled the trigger because he was pushing this, this soul, this beautiful soul, to do the things he was making her do and treat her the way he was treating her. He might as well pull the trigger. There needs to be something that happens to him.
It makes me so upset on so many levels. Like, as a man, it makes me upset that, like, someone like that there's someone out there that does that to somebody, to anybody, really, but, like, to your wife, like, that's messed up. The fact that you're a pastor and the fact that, like, that, it just hurts to see that there are people that claim that they're men of God that do stuff like that. It's like, that's so.
Well, I mean,
it's so messed up. And I know it's been happening forever, and it probably will continue. But it hurts me to know that, like, also, like, I feel like there are people out there doing a good work. There are people out there that are upstanding men and women that are doing great things in the church and doing things like that. But a story like this is, is what really kind of, like, makes it so hard to, for outsiders to look in and go, oh, that's what you guys do. And it's like, no, that's not who we are.
Well,
so
here, I mean, this is a pretty good article here. It's the Post and Courier is where I'm getting this information from. It says, sometimes while he preached, JP would offer small glimpses into his messy life. In October, he told congregants in a videotaped sermon that he was struggling, taking 900 milligrams of lithium.
Good gosh.
A mood stabilizer often used to treat mental illnesses, like bipolar disorder. He said he was seeing a psychiatrist and a counselor and was battling to get out of bed in the morning. I have unforgiveness, hatred, demons coming out of me, he said. In an April sermon, Miller said, I'm in a winter season like you can't even imagine. I hate my life right now. It feels like it will last forever.
Why? First of all, why? Why was there nobody in his council,
his inner circle,
him because like maybe you should step down?
Right.
That's what I said earlier. There was no council.
You need to get your life together.
Yeah.
And one other person that was his counselor,
really?
And that was it. There was no council. He
there
was
was
the leader
no-
of the church. That was it. 100%.
Suspicious. I don't like
Yeah,
that. I like accountability.
Very sketch.
They say this even gets better. The day after Mica died, JP texted her family. Francis said, "This is what happens when you try to encourage someone to divorce the person they love and tell them they don't need medicine and that they're not ill when they are," J.P. Miller allegedly wrote, according to text messages Micah's family has shared online.
That feels like a threat.
Good job, Francis family. JP said in a recent live TikTok interview that he'll release information soon showing he was the only person trying to help Mica. He said he went to 48 people in 3 months and no one believed him. That Mica was suicidal and needed lithium. Mica's sister insists she never had any mental health problems before marrying JP.
Yep.
In a February sermon titled Be a Peacemaker, JP told worshipers not everyone is who they say they are. If you knew every single thing about me, everything I've done wrong, you probably wouldn't be here today, he said, and you probably wouldn't want to be my friend. What kind of sermon is that?
I have been in some church services with some rather eccentric pastors that, may say
I
some
thought you're
things.
supposed to at least teach on the gospel. That's what you're supposed to be there for, it's a self-help session.
Yeah.
I mean,
or a self-deprecating
Very few
session.
people want to hear the real gospel anymore.
Well,
Okay,
but
now that's what churches
isn't that
are
the
now.
whole point?
Motivational,
It's all about
engagements.
feel-good stuff now. Like, what is about
it ain't.
take up your cross and follow me? I don't get that. I mean,
I think people do
crazy.
I have a lot of feelings. Because that is not, because I do believe that if you're preaching an actual sermon, if you're saying some things that I think challenge people but also encourage them in the right way, I think people want to hear that. Obviously, they want to have a feel good. A lot of times, people want to have a feel good, but I think people, honestly, more often than not, that I've noticed, if you're able to challenge them in the right way and also encourage them,
I don't want to hear a pastor who says, I've never done anything wrong. I've never been in a bad situation. Because then how are you going to tell me how to live my life? A pastor, and I have one that's a good friend, he's a human being.
Right.
And I can listen to him all day long because I know what he's been through, and I know the deliverance. I've seen the deliverance.
Right.
And that person can reach me.
Of course.
Well, it said here, at a Memorial Day worship service, a burly but friendly usher in a bright shirt, green Bermuda shorts, and a newsboy cap stood at the top of the church steps and politely inspected women's bags for weapons before they entered. After a period of music, some worshipers recalled the days when Mica sang while JP played the piano. One woman said in a recent email from the church, cautioned members about speaking to visitors because they might be reporters. Before Randall introduced the guest pastor who would preach that day, he told the congregation that he was still helping JP work through some of issues. Randall joked that he hadn't thrown him overboard, so people who claim he had been fired are lying. But there were no professions of loyalty or confidence in his return. Across the street, 10 protesters held signs inscribed with "Justice for Mica" under the broiling sun. cars honking appreciatively punctuated the worship. Wow. Sometimes they heckle us, one worshiper said, with no trace of anger.
And see, like, this is what I'm talking about for that. Like I'm all for. Oh gosh, it just makes me sad. It makes me sad on multiple levels.
Well, I mean, we all know locally. I
know.
mean, in our own communities, they've, there's been plenty of pastors that have gotten themselves in trouble. Generally, it's always around sex.
Yep.
I mean, it just is. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. They can't seem to, control themselves, or they feel like they can't be touched.
Right.
What's
the saying? Ultimate power corrupts
ultimately. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It does. And what was the famous emperor, Roman emperor that he
Caligula?
had? No, I'm trying to think of his name. It was a famous emperor that while he was marching through the streets and he was, being worshipped as a deity.
Oh, is he the one who had the little guy standing
saying,
behind him?
You're nothing but a man.
You're still human.
You're still a man.
You're still a man.
And sometimes I think we need people to say, you're just a man. Mm-hmm. You're not a deity. You're not untouchable.
Somebody needs to do that to some of our politicians.
Yep.
So it's
you're not our leader. You're just a representative.
Marcus Aurelius,
which was a very good emperor. Man, he was a philosopher emperor. As a matter of fact, there's a book called The Meditations of Marcus Aurelius.
I think that's also where like Stoicism stuff comes from.
It is.
Right? Yeah,
mm-hmm. He was a philosopher emperor.
Yeah.
He'd spent his, not to get off topic, talking about the Roman Empire, but I mean, which I love that period of time.
Right.
But he had spent a good bit of his life actually battling barbarians.
Right. But I think to kind of tie it all back into it is, there's a certain point in time where a person has a level of power or has a level of authority that they feel like they have, and it always brings out. And then you've got a situation like this where, like, this person, I think, JP has battling with some real mental problems.
Oh yes, no doubt.
Untreated. I think he says he takes lithium, but I think he's gotten some real untreated stuff that he's dealing with. And he's blaming it a lot on religious-based stuff and other things and quote-unquote sins that he has, which that's probably not inaccurate. But, like, when you boil it down, too, you also really got some problems, and you're taking it out on your congregation, you're taking it out on your family, on your wife, and I don't know. It makes this whole discussion a lot more suspicious that you got a community of people backing up Mica, saying this person's a little bit off, and then of course you say some of the most outlandish things that,
Miller convinced church elders that Mica had been having a psychotic episode for months, and that anything she said couldn't be trusted. Bernard Kennerson said JP would sometimes show elders a 3-inch notebook he claimed was documentation of Mica's mental health problems.
And I wouldn't be surprised if that notebook was just filled with the scribblings of his own mental problems.
He probably did. He's projecting that on her.
100%.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
100%. That's crazy. Jeez, man.
This thing is
the ramblings of an idiot.
Yeah. This is bizarre.
Or it's just like his what do they call it? Whenever like you're schizophrenic or whatever, like you just have like the random scrawlings of a madman. It's just that's all it is.
Yeah, they said Kennerson received a call soon after Mica's death on April 27th, asking him to prepare a sermon for the next day. 10 minutes later, he received a text saying JP planned to preach. The following Wednesday, the elders met, a dozen of them. The message from JP and Randall was that all this would blow over in a couple weeks. JP would step down temporarily. At this meeting, like others, the elders had no real power. Decisions flowed from JP and Randall Kennerson. And Randall Kennerson said, the elders didn't even see church financial statements.
Wow.
One left the church because of the secrecy around the money, he said.
Yeah, I don't like that.
That's what I was saying earlier.
Yeah.
I didn't go into that detail, but there was only 2 people that had any power whatsoever.
Yikes.
Yeah. I mean, this is, you know, I don't know, man. This article goes in very deep.
It also, for me, like, even if you're getting a divorce, like, even if you've been married to someone, I feel like you'd have, you know, at least a mourning period, you know? Like, I feel like, I mean, unless that person, like, you really hated them, I feel like if you actually cared about your wife in some capacity and she committed suicide, there would be some sadness, there would be some mourning, there would be some sort of something. But the fact that he's just like, or at least from what's coming across from this reading, is that he's still planning on preaching a sermon and just kind of feels like it's just nonchalant, which kind of feels a little suspicious as well. That, like, I feel like even if I hated somebody, if something like that was to happen, I'd be like, you know, I just gotta step away for some time. But that doesn't seem to be the case. He feels like a controlling
Said Bernard
psychopath.
Yeah. Said Kennerson had met with JP one day last August to issue a warning. Kennerson confronted him about the rumors going around the church, despite not knowing full details at the time. He told JP that whatever he'd done, God knows. Kennerson said JP seemed to get the message and agreed he needed to do better. They ended the meeting with a prayer. Kennerson said he later learned at least 4 other people had been advised the pastor to change his ways, but nothing changed. If anything, Kennerson said it got worse.
Ooh.
I'm still torn up about the fact that it took Mica's death, but what's happening with him in Solid Rock Ministries, it's the judgment of God, Kennerson said. You had a lot of good, healthy things going on, ministry and people caring for each other and being there for each other and supporting each other. And then you've got this problem, Shepherd. Property and tax records show the church had millions of dollars in assets, including a plane and 11 vehicles.
Get out.
And plans for $1, well, it says plans for a $1 expansion at the backside.
$1 million.
It's a $1 million
expansion. They were going to build a new sanctuary.
Kennerson said the plan was for JP to start flying to other churches around the country to preach. Why would you need to go preach at other churches?
Well, I mean, if he's a big enough name, but I don't know who would.
I don't understand.
My thing is, if he was a good pastor that actually had great sermons, I could see that. I'd be like, yeah, let's get that nice pastor out here. But he doesn't sound like a nice pastor at all.
Yeah, he says he never knew the church owned so many vehicles, or that JP had sold the family home to the church in December for $169,000, more than $70,000 less than its market value. He never knew JP was part owner of Crocodile Rocks. Kennerson said JP was good at controlling the narrative about his personal life inside the church and has a close inner circle dedicated to protecting him. We were not aware of this deep, dark side, Kennerson said. Kennerson said his wife resigned the week after Mica died, when JP's private life started spilling into public view. So, yeah.
That's wild.
I mean, this goes on and on and on.
Dang.
I highly recommend, people really want to know a lot. I'm reading this article. It was published June 5th of this year. It's called The Double Life of Pastor J.P. Miller, How Mica Miller's Death Exposed the Sins of Her Husband. It's the Post and Courier.
Yep, there you go. Stoney's excited he had it all printed out.
So it's good. It's a good article. Had a lot of information in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really did. It really did.
That's crazy.
Yep. We also know that he was on a date 4 days after Mica's suicide.
I guess he was grieving so bad he just had to go.
He was seen
he had to go be with another woman, right?
Laughing and having a good time.
That's what I was talking about a second ago. I was like, even if you hated somebody, if something like that was to come out, you would at least have a moment where, I don't know
how anybody could, but the guy must be a very charismatic guy.
He's something.
People are drawn to him, and he knows how to pull the levers with people and to get them to like him.
Yep.
We've all known people like that. It's like, I can't dislike this person because he's just so nice. And, but In reality, it's
Ted Bundy.
It's all a fake.
Ted Bundy was like that.
It was a fake image.
Especially if you have people in your life that help keep the skeletons in the closet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's unfortunate.
Highly, it's going to be interesting how this plays out, but it would not surprise me one bit if this guy ends up committing suicide because they find something and then the walls start closing in. Now, this guy could be completely innocent. He could not have, maybe psychologically he made her kill herself.
Yeah.
You know?
That's still guilty.
It's still guilty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But have a way, I think justice always seems to kind of come around and
just like you
and touch you.
Just like you read a few minutes ago, it's unfortunate that it had to come at the death of her for everything to come out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that there should have been more. It makes me sad that out of a congregation of 700 people,
700 people,
that there wasn't a small group of people that couldn't take him down a little bit more, or at least hold him more accountable or something. And I know that he probably had a tight-knit group of people that were going to protect him, but it's suspicious. And it's sad that it's all coming out now, and now everyone's jumping on the bandwagon that he's a bad person. When
we always have to be vigilant.
Yep.
Of people we place our trust in, and just to be aware that they are subject to the same temptations, the same failures that we all are, and sometimes, and for me being a religious and spiritual person, I do believe that people that are in ministry and are leading other people are constantly being bombarded by the dark side.
Yes.
Of to slip and fall.
And that's what I had said earlier in the conversation. If you are a part of a ministry that doesn't have good accountability, that doesn't have checks and balances in place, I would be very suspicious of a place like that. I've been a part of some ministries like that.
Well, you heard stories about Billy Graham was never alone with anybody ever except his wife. Never. They never would allow that type of situation to even happen, or for temptation to come in, or for somebody to cause some sketchy stuff to try to drag him down. Right. He was never allowed to be alone with anybody except his wife.
Well, he was smart.
Right. Yeah. I've been a part of some ministries that didn't have a good hierarchy structure, that didn't have accountability in place, and people in places like that, and it gets suspicious, and I get suspicious because a lot of times it starts to show in some of the things, and it makes it very.
In our area, we had a very well-known person fall. And at the time, I was in protective services.
I think I know exactly what you're talking about.
I even offered my services to help this person, and I was told no. And then it happened again a year later, and I said, "You know what? You got it, buddy.
That was it.
You don't want to change.
You're on your own.
That's it.
Right. If you don't want help, you don't want help.
You don't want help.
Yep.
Because
they
like what they were doing.
And this is part of there's a word I want to use, and I don't know what it is, but terminology. This person lives in a 2-bedroom home and tells everybody, I live in a 2-bedroom home. It's over 10,000 square feet, but there's technically only 2 bedrooms in it.
Yeah. Wow. Somehow I just don't think that's what Jesus, was talking about.
I had a really great conversation with someone recently, and I think I may have even said it on the podcast, possibly, or I don't even remember. But it struck me so much is that if it divides, it's not of God. If it separates people from each other, if it ostracizes a group of people, if it all that kind of stuff, it's probably not. It's not what Jesus would have wanted.
You're right. And when people get into power, they just go to. There's one church in the South that demands not just your check stub. your tax records every year. And they because they want to make sure they're getting their full 10%, not of just your, what if you got stocks and this and properties. They want your tax records to make sure, or you just don't come to the church. Really?
You don't need all that.
Really?
As I said, I think in many ways sometimes we get off the train tracks. I mean, somehow we get off into this, something changes, and you know, I can understand why people have been abandoning religion.
Mm-hmm. Well, especially when things like this happen.
Because they see this and they go, oh, there it is, another shyster, you know, that taking advantage of gullible people.
Yeah.
You know,
and that's what I was saying when I was talking. I couldn't quite articulate my feelings because I feel so strongly about a lot of this. Is that there are good people out there doing good work?
Oh, there's plenty. There's more good than there is bad.
You're right. Mm-hmm. But it's things like that get talked about.
Exactly.
That, of course, that muddies the water and makes everyone go, "Oh, that's what Christianity is." It's like, no, definitely not.
It's not,
and it's sad, but you know.
Well,
wow.
And it's sad that it came at the loss of life, like we said. That
as I said, you know, I've said on the struggle continues.
You're right. Well, on that note, it's got a bit of a depressing note to end. But anyways, for any of those who are looking to reach out to us, we have a Facebook page at Retrospect Pod. Literally at Retrospect Pod, I think, is what we have on almost everything. Where you can reach out to us and give us some comments. Apparently, there's this new feature that we found out on Buzzsprout where you can send like text messages through that way, which I think is pretty cool. Not quite sure how it fully works. I'll look into it some more, but it should be in the description of the episode as well. But yeah, I've been working on the YouTube channel a little bit. So if anybody out there is trying to look, or you have YouTube Music or want to watch some of the like the little video versions of it, just type in at Retrospect Pod in the search bar, and you can find our channel right there.
And retrospectpodcast.com. I'm working on that.
Yeah.
We got the website going up, and
many great ways to get connected.
A lot of stuff. And actually, I'm going to, what's the term you like to do? Behind the
curtain.
Behind the curtain. We actually have some cameras up on the table here right now. We might be experimenting with some video in the near future. Right. So
it's coming.
It's coming. I like
coming.
that. It's coming.
It's coming.
So we're really excited about the YouTube thing. I'm kind of glad they did that because YouTube is a great what's the word I'm looking for? Platform. Man, this brain shit is kicking my ass. It's a great platform, and then you'll be able to kind of see some stuff, and we're excited. We're excited about the future and things that are coming, and we're excited to have you as listeners.
Yeah.
And some of your feedback is fantastic. Oh, yeah. We have because 120 characters is generally not enough for our intellectual group. We have a website, email that you can connect with us. What is that?
GetOffendedTogether@gmail.com.
That's it. So you can write the 4-pagers that we've gotten in the past, responses to some of our stuff, and tell us what you think and what you're happy about and what you'd like to see us talk about too.
Yeah. But until next week, thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.
Goodbye, everyone. God bless.
Hey, thanks for hanging out with us today. You're the best. Peace.